just one other thing on the diagnosis piece, I suppose, is that we have to also be, I think, understanding and I suppose humble in the fact that our clinical assessment can't always isolate structural injuries. And, while our clinical assessment is brilliant at creating a sense of what the functional problem is, the person's strength, the person's power, and also can get a good sense of what the structural injury is. It's not perfect at that. And a good example of this will be things like muscle strains. And it's something that I think has really evolved in physiotherapy practice over the last few years, where, you rewind 10 years ago, a muscle strain was at best a grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3. Now we have a totally different way of thinking about it. We now want to know what actual structure is injured here. Have we got muscle injured? Have we got tendon injured? What part of the tendon is injured? And we know that our clinical assessment techniques can't fully find that out. So we need to refer for imaging if we want to be very specific around that. And I think that's a really important part. Again, that we've probably all been caught thinking, oh, this looks like a low grade strain. And then, okay, we go and organise a scan and realise actually there's a tendon involvement here and it's higher grade. And that's because some of those injuries are just a little bit sneaky in the way they present. They can feel fine when I'm lying on the bed. They can feel fine when I'm walking around. And these are often the ones then that people get caught with, where, geez, everything felt grand when I was doing all of this slow, easy stuff in the gym and slow and easy stuff on the physio bed. And then actually I went back running and, even jogging was okay. But when I went to sprint, I got caught. And that's because we didn't have the diagnosis right. And I can only just think of a slightly separate example there recently, where I had a client coming in, he's a distance runner and had a history of, previous stress fractures, and came in to me saying, listen, I've pulled my calf. Really certain he's pulled his calf. Kind of, that's what it felt like. He's had a low grade calf strain before, and we assessed it. And, listening to his story, he had ran on it, got some pain, gave it a week to rest, ran on it again, got pain again. And then he did some soft tissue work himself, like he got the massage going out, and it was around his lateral calf. And that made him way worse. He was really sore after the soft tissue work. When I assessed him and we palpate through the area, he did actually have a low-grade calf strain, but he also had a fibular stress fracture. And it's so easy to miss these things because, he says it's a calf injury. It kind of looks and smells like a calf injury, but only when we really dig into it and, listen carefully to his story and also pay close attention to where his pain is and how it feels when we palpate that bone, and then we follow that up with a scan, we realise this guy has a stress fracture. We actually have to pull back here, and we can't treat it in the way we would normally treat a calf injury. And that saves huge time for people too, because you just don't want to be the clinician who is, bringing someone around the roundabout of this is a calf strain when actually it's a stress fracture. And it's so I think that again just explains that reason why it's so important for us to get the diagnosis right.
Big time. And I think as part of that diagnosis, part of that plan, sometimes we can have the one word answer there, which is stress fracture or calf strain. But really, we've all the factors that led to that. I often call it finding the root cause. It's like, okay, you're coming into me with your 4th calf strain in a row. It's easy to just say, let's rehab the calf. But really, this could be a load management issue that you're doing far too much running. This could be a strength issue. You're not generally strength training. This could be an asymmetry issue that maybe your other leg is weak or your knee isn't doing its job. And when you're running, there's not enough coming from your quad, not enough from your glute, and it's all coming from your calf. This could be, I'm not sleeping, I'm not recovering, I'm not eating enough. And, while we often want a one word, one joint, simple answer, I often say it's like a pie chart. And on that pie chart, we've got really big segments, the elephant in the room. The huge thing here is, okay, your calf's at you. But we've all these little contributing factors, they're all adding up. And, the more I think we can think maybe holistically, or the more we can start to challenge some of these other things, or even just highlight them. This might be new information to the runner who didn't know that they ramped their mileage too quickly after their holiday, or they didn't know that, actually I need to sleep and eat more and whatever else it is. So there's all these factors that lead us to the injury. What's the root cause? I see it with my golfers all the time. They have a low back pain, and the golf low back pain from rotating can be completely different than the low back pain I get in the garden picking something up. And it's a little bit my hip could be more mobile, it's a little bit my shoulder could be more mobile, it's a little bit I need to sit back, and it's a little bit that I shouldn't hit 150 balls on the driving range the day before round. So if you can get all these factors right, I think that's where you can get a huge win with patients. And maybe you earlier on in your career it was hard to spot how all these things can add up.
And you're touching on something there that's so important. It's that idea of the broader context, and as you mentioned there, actually in that specific story there about his client with the stress fracture, he'd had a previous stress fracture, and he'd gone to a dietitian and done loads of hard work on trying to, improve the factors that we know are associated with sort of bone stress injuries. So it was kind of hard for him to hear again that he'd a bone stress injury. But when we drilled into it, he's got a newborn baby, and sleep's not good, of course, and we can often just maybe miss these things that are there. That if I'm suddenly sleeping, 4 or 5 hours a night and I'm still training at a high load, well, look, my body just can't recover as well. And I think that's where the kind of detective work and the kind of rapport and the relationship you build with your client is so important, that you're trying to get access to this information that, sometimes takes a while to kind of, for the full story to come out as well. And it can be difficult. And I think a few key questions I think that we always need to ask are, how's your sleep? Because it usually is a good marker for how are you stressed, or how much stress have you going on? Like if, and how busy you are, and maybe what else is happening in your life. So, I think asking those questions around sleep and around stress and around, kind of life load, is there any big life, events happening at the moment, which of course can be an impact on how our body recovers and how I feel. So definitely, I think really, really important.